In this spiritual perspective, we're going to talk about genocide. This is not about offering a strategic solution to a specific genocide that is happening on the planet right now. This is more of a broader perspective of a long-term solution that we as individuals can start implementing as of today in order to help to prevent genocides that are happening both now as well as in the future. Because from a spiritual perspective, a genocide is really less of a story about those people over there who are doing this horrible thing to this other group of people and trying to figure out who's right and who's wrong. And it's more of a story about us, meaning who are we in relationship to those kinds of conflicts that are happening around the planet? Why do we allow such things to happen under our watch? And what can we do to help bring about more peace? Because from the ground level perspective, it looks like the genocide or the conflict or the war is happening because this leader did this thing, which led to this event, which cascaded into this other outcome. Some people say that it started many years ago or decades before from this other event. Other people claim that it's justified in religious texts and that this event from that book led to this other event. And again, this is ground level perspective. I'm not saying that that's not relevant, but that's the storyline when we're looking at it very up close at that ground level perspective. So when we get a chance to zoom out and observe it from more of a spiritual perspective, the 30,000 foot view, all conflict, it doesn't matter who started it, doesn't matter who's involved in it. All conflict on the planet in history is a symptom of a stressed collective consciousness. Now, what is a collective consciousness? Collective consciousness means the sum total of all of the individuals that are on the planet. So if you think of it kind of like water in a fishbowl, right? Now, if the water is clean and purified, then the fish are generally speaking going to be healthy and they're going to do what fish do. However, if the water is tainted, it really doesn't matter how well-intentioned those fish are, they are going to get sick. And so to stop the fish from getting sick, the water needs to stay as purified as possible. And likewise, when we talk about the collective consciousness, if the sum total of individuals are stressed, then it doesn't matter how well-intentioned the leaders are or the society is, we're all going to come up with stress-based solutions to whatever our problems happen to be. And the best ideas that we can come up with oftentimes are going to be some variation of the stress reaction. So running, fleeing, freezing, or fighting and trying to kill the enemy. That's why when you're in a stress reaction, they call it the fight-flight response, because the best idea that you have in that reaction is going to be some form of running and fighting, and oftentimes fighting to the death. It doesn't have to be physical running or physical fighting. It could also be psychological, which includes confrontation, passive aggression, being disagreeable, overreacting in some other distressful way, and hurting or harming someone else or another group of people. Now, obviously, everybody thinks they're the good guy and the other side is the bad guy. And if only the other side changed in some way and didn't create all this drama, then there would be no problem, right? This is more of an external approach to change. And I don't know how many of you guys saw that documentary, Wild Wild Country, which is about the guru named Osho. But whether you agree with Osho or don't agree with Osho, he said some pretty wise and profound things. And one of the things that he said, and I'm just going to read it here for you because I think it applies to this situation. He said, look, revolution is a spiritual phenomenon. He said there can be no political revolution, no social revolution, no economic revolution. The only revolution is that of the spirit. It is that of the individual. And if millions of individuals change, then and only then will society change as a consequence, not vice versa. He said you cannot change the society first and then hope that the individuals will change later on. That's why revolutions have been failing, because we've taken revolution from a very wrong direction. We have thought that if you change the society and you change the structure, whether it's economic or political, then one day the individuals, the constituent elements of the society will change. But he says that is stupid and backwards. Now, my spiritual teacher had a different way of putting it. He said, look, if you want a green forest, then all of the trees in the forest must be green, or at the very least, the majority of the trees in the forest have to be green. And likewise, if you want world peace, then most of the people in the world must cultivate a sense of inner peace. Okay, which makes sense. So then the question becomes, on an individual level, are you contributing more peace into the collective consciousness on a daily basis, or are you contributing more stress into the collective consciousness? And again, this is how all these spiritual perspective episodes go. It always ties back to us as individuals. What am I doing in this moment that is either creating the kind of experience that I want to have, or that is adding to the type of experience that I don't want to have? It's so easy to point the finger at the other people. Oh, they're just so evil and so bad and so horrible, and look at ourselves as the sort of innocent observer of the situation. But from the spiritual perspective, everything that's happening in our world is an extension of our own individual consciousness. And so it's a mirror to how we're showing up on a daily basis. And again, this is a big responsibility, right? Because what it's saying is that we are, in effect, contributing to all the things that we're seeing in the world, either by our actions or our inactions, right? But if we are the ones that are responsible for it as individuals, then we're also going to be responsible for providing the solution as individuals. And so the way you know you're reacting to the world stressfully is that you are experiencing lots of anger, lots of sadness, lots of anxiety, lots of fear, lots of mania. And I'm not saying that to judge or label or shame anyone, but it's feedback about what we personally are contributing to the collective consciousness. So if we're putting a lot of fear and anger and all that into the collective, then naturally society is going to become more fearful. It's going to become more angry, and it's going to become less patient with people who are different from us. So that's what we're contributing to by feeding that into the collective consciousness. Conversely, we could be feeding more adaptation energy into the collective consciousness. And how do you know that you're doing that? Because in your day-to-day, moment-to-moment life, you are experiencing more adaptation. You're adapting to the changes, to the demands, and to the pressures that you are experiencing. Hey, if you've been knocking your head against the wall when it comes to daily meditation, falling off the wagon, getting back on, not quite sure if what you're doing is working, don't worry, I got you. For a limited time, I'm giving away my signature 7-day meditation kickstart for free to you, my spiritual perspective listeners. Plus, you'll get a free 2-week all-access pass to my entire Happiness Insiders online curriculum of challenges and masterclasses, which will provide you with a crystal clear roadmap for mastering your inner work. You'll also get support directly from me and accountability and a place to ask questions. And you can join me live for a meditation on each of your 2 free weeks. So with zero cost to you, you can get a daily meditation practice that you'll actually enjoy and look forward to doing for the rest of your life. And you'll have me to personally support you and hold you accountable. And after your 7-day meditation kickstart ends, you can start the 108-day meditation challenge and get even more support. And you can take as many other inner work challenges and masterclasses as you can fit into those 2 weeks. We have an unheard of 80% completion rate for our challenges, which is over 20 times higher than your average online course. So if you've been feeling stuck and inconsistent when it comes to your inner work practices, you will not find a better solution anywhere online. Go to thehappinessinsiders.com and let's get your meditation practice up and running today. That's thehappinessinsiders.com. And you can tell that nagging daily stress to kiss your ass. I'll put a link below in the description. Now, adapting does not mean you are accepting bad things or abusive situations. It could mean that you're deciding to do something about it, something useful, something productive. It could mean speaking your mind. It could mean looking after yourself in a better way. It could be getting more rest so that you can continue to show up more fully. Right? There's no one size fits all way to adapt to change, but usually it's taking some action that's not being motivated by stress. Rather, that action is being motivated by clarity, by a broader level of awareness, by a sense of personal responsibility to what one is experiencing. And this is what the world ultimately needs more of, right? If what we want more than anything else are leaders who are offering more adaptable solutions to their constituents' problems, then we need to change the collective consciousness. When the collective consciousness has more adaptation energy, the best idea about who to elect as a leader in the first place is going to be the candidates with the most adaptable solutions to the society's problems. And you may think this is mumbo jumbo. You may think this sounds delusional or it's merely aspirational. and that it's not realistic. But that's another symptom of a stressed collective consciousness, right? And it reminds me of another spiritual saying, which is, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. So if we're experiencing lots of stress internally, then naturally we're going to feel less inclined to entertain any solutions that appear to be too aspirational. Instead, we tend to default to cynicism around these sort of broader awareness-based solutions. But as we continue with our inner work, then our ideas around coming up with more viable solutions are going to begin to expand. They're going to begin to make more sense, and they're going to begin to appear more possible. So all that to say, don't worry about trying to see what I'm saying or trying to find the right solution or be adaptable. Just focus on upgrading your internal state from whatever degree of stress you're experiencing to experiencing more inner peace. And then as a consequence of that, more adaptable solutions are just going to naturally occur to you. And it's going to look different for different people. For me, it makes the idea of creating these videos very enticing. But for you, it may be writing a book, maybe the next great novel. Or for someone else, the idea to compose a symphony or to choreograph a musical or to start a garden or to run for office or to make a career pivot or to volunteer at a shelter for abused women. It makes those kinds of ideas more enticing, right? The biggest waste of time is for us to sit around wondering, why aren't more people speaking up about this genocide or whatever the issue is that you're most passionate about, or to allow yourself to be bothered by how someone is speaking up or not speaking up or using their platform or not using their platform or why they're covering the news in this way and not that way. And instead, we want to focus on what we can do in making ourselves so inspiring in our unique approach that the people who were once apathetic to the cause become inspired as well because of the way we're approaching this, because of how inclusive we're being, because we're able to verify and validate their experience as well and make them seem to be a part of a larger mission. And so if you are sincere enough and adaptable enough in your approach, you may create something with your book, with your song, with your choreography, with your garden, with your volunteer work, where you inspire people to want to join your cause. That's how these things happen. If you go back and you look at the early days of Gandhi's movement for Indian independence and the early days of the civil rights movement and all the other movements that have happened, usually it starts from one or two individuals coming together and being aspirational as well as inspirational. And these are regular people, just like me and you. They're not saints and gods and immortal figures. These are just regular people with families, with concerns. They have to pay bills just like you and I. And they just said, enough is enough. I'm going to do something meaningful about this situation in the way that feels aligned with me, my heart, my soul, my spirit. And they took the leap of faith, and people saw that and they go, wow, I want to be a part of that. That's how it happens. And that is the most adaptable solution that we as individuals can offer to the collective consciousness that will help to purify that water so that the illness in the society and the disease and the dynamic and how we treat each other, which then becomes the genocide and the war and the conflict and all the other crazy things that are happening on the planet, starts to dissipate and will get replaced by more adaptable solutions and more adaptable ways of interacting with one another. So I hope you found this helpful. If you resonated with what I was talking about, you may want to check out this other spiritual perspective, which is called When Everything Happens for a Reason Hurts. Or you can click here to see the entire playlist of other spiritual perspective videos. Warning, when you watch these videos, you are going to be purple pilled, which means you are going to see the world through the lens of the spiritual perspective. So enjoy, leave a comment letting me know what you would like for me to create spiritual perspective videos about next. And otherwise, I'll see you next time.